Before we begin, may I request everyone to put their mobile phones on silent? Excellencies, distinguished guests present here, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning to all of you. On behalf of the Indian Council of World Affairs, New Delhi, it is a pleasure to welcome you all for the 40th Sapru House lecture on the theme Solutions Through Solidarity, Sustainability and Science at the UN. We are delighted to have with us our esteemed guest, His Excellency Ambassador Csaba Korosi, President of the 77th UN General Assembly, as the speaker for this lecture. We are grateful for his kind acceptance of our invitation. The program will be as follows. Introductory remarks will be made by Director General ICWA, who will also be chairing this session. His Excellency Ambassador Korosi will deliver his lecture thereafter. His Excellency has also agreed to take a few questions at the end of this session. The Q&A round will be moderated by the chair. With this, may I now invite Ambassador Vijay Thakur Singh, DG ICWA, to make her introductory remarks and take over the proceedings of this lecture.
A very good morning to all present here. It is indeed an honor and privilege to host the President of the United Nations General Assembly, His Excellency Csaba Korosi, at the Indian Council of World Affairs for the 40th Sapru House lecture. I warmly welcome him here today. I would also like to welcome the permanent representative of India to the United Nations, Ambassador Ruchira Kamboj, heads of missions of ambassadors resident here, and other members of the diplomatic corps, the UN resident commissioner here, Shomi Sharp, my former senior colleagues, ambassadors of India who are present here today, distinguished guests, the scholars, students, and the media present here today. His Excellency Korosi was elected in June 2022 by acclamation as President of the 77th session of the UN General Assembly and has been serving the community of member states and working with the host of stakeholders at the United Nations through the 77th session, which began in September last year. President Korosi has had a distinguished and illustrious diplomatic career. He joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Hungary in 1983 and worked in various capacities, including as Ambassador of Hungary to Greece and to the United Arab Emirates. Till 2025, he was Hungary's permanent representative to the UN in New York, where he also served as Vice President of the 66th UN General Assembly and co-chaired the intergovernmental process tasked with producing the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and Sustainable Development Goals. He is thus considered to be one of the architects of the Sustainable Development Goals, which today the whole world is following and seeks to implement. Prior to his current role as President of UNGA, he was State Secretary of the Office of the President of Hungary, where he worked alongside former President János Áder in discharging his functions as a member of the high-level panel on water co-convened by the UN Secretary General and the President of the World Bank. President Korosi is a founding member of the Hungarian Scientific Panel on Climate Change and a permanent invitee to the National Council on Sustainable Development at the Hungarian National Assembly. The role of United Nations to promote international peace, security, and cooperation has become ever more important today in a world which is faced with multidimensional crisis of conflict, of food crisis, energy crisis, fallout of COVID pandemic, and climate change, as also new domains which are emerging, such as digital governance and outer space, among others. The vision statement of His Excellency Korosi as President of the 77th session of the UN General Assembly was welcomed by member states. It underlines the importance of solutions through solidarity, sustainability, and science, which is the theme of today's talk. Needless to say, we are all very much looking forward to the lecture today. As a founder member of the United Nations, India has made significant contributions to upholding the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter and to the shared pursuit of peace and development of all member states. India's priorities in the United Nations, including in the UN Security Council, wherein India completed its 2 years tenure, aligned very strongly with the vision of President Korosi. India works with a spirit of solidarity with member states to achieve comprehensive and equitable solutions to global challenges, whether it is peace building and peacekeeping, sustainable development, climate change, or reformed multilateralism, including the long-pending reform of the UN Security Council, so very important for an effective and credible United Nations system. The theme of India's G20 presidency of One Earth, One Family, One Future reflects the importance of oneness and solidarity. Moreover, India's G20 presidency is aimed at being ambitious, action-oriented, and inclusive. Sustainability is the core of India's approach to development. India launched Mission Life, Lifestyle for Environment. In 2021, it promotes the need for each individual to adopt a responsible approach towards environment. Earlier, in 2017, India-UNDP Partnership Fund was set up to work with fellow developing countries in the spirit of South-South cooperation. This fund contributes to the achievement of sustainable development goals driven by the priorities of and ownership by partner states. A total of 100 million over the next decade has been committed by the Government of India for projects that are in alignment with G20, with 2020 SDGs. On the aspect of science and technology, their role in development is fundamental. India has established an impressive digital public infrastructure that has been used for health, financial inclusion, and citizen-centric governance. India has formulated Science, Technology and Innovation STI roadmaps for SDGs as a part of the global pilot program on STIs launched in 2019, where India is among one of the 5 pilot countries. I am confident, Excellency, that your visit to India will further deepen India's partnership with the United Nations. May I now invite President of the General Assembly, His Excellency Csaba Korosi, to deliver his address on solutions through solidarity, sustainability, and science at the UN. With this, I invite His Excellency President to deliver his remarks.
Thank you very much indeed, Ambassador Singh. It's an honor to be with you today at the Indian Council of World Affairs, and my apologies for my voice and probably blowing my nose from time to time. It's not only because I tried to enjoy the parade yesterday on the rain, but I brought it over something from New York. But the good news today, it was reconfirmed that it's not COVID. My best wishes as you celebrate Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, commemorating 75 years of India's independence and achievements. In the world of international affairs, there is no place like a think tank or research body. There are seats, learning, analysis, and discussions, aspects of crucial importance to our work. Importantly, the work you do here brings together the curious, the young, the informed, and the inspired to debate and shape our common agenda and our common future. And above all, you are independent, which should be very highly appreciated. In the 14th century, the King of Hungary and Holy Roman Emperor Sigismund once got frustrated by some priest correcting his Latin, the official language of Europe at that time. But then one of his bishops bluntly told him in front of the court, Majesty, even emperors cannot prescribe what opinions scholars should have. Yes, you are scholars, or should I say the pundits of international affairs, bringing knowledge, experience, a new perspective into a volatile and emotional trade of ours. So I look forward to your reflections, questions, and ideas and suggestions because, dear friends, I've always maintained that governments do not hold a monopoly on good ideas. In fact, the urgency of today's crisis demands that we look beyond business as usual and that we transcend the confines of convention, that we think and act outside of the box. To put simply, we need a paradigm shift. Dear colleagues, when I assumed the presidency of the United Nations General Assembly last year, I made a promise. A promise to all 193 member states of the United Nations, and through them, a promise to you, and to all the 8 billion constituents and shareholders of this fragile planet. As it has been mentioned by Ambassador Singh, my promise and the motto of my presidency is to foster solutions through solidarity, sustainability, and science. Solidarity amongst nations and peoples to foster peace and build prosperity. Sustainability to ensure our solutions stand the test of time and benefit succeeding generations. Science to address the dearth of common understanding that plagues our discussions. I'm under no illusion as to the scale of the challenges facing that promise. But in the UN General Assembly, the Parliament of the world, where ambitions must meet action, I'm hopeful that we can, we will, and we must prevail. Inaction is simply not an option. I have challenged member states of the United Nations to take a two-pronged approach to our work, to narrow their focus to achieve real results for those who mandate them and those who rely on them, to focus on quality of outcome over quantity of output. The dual approach is focused on crisis management and transformation. Excellencies, dear friends, the context in which we are operating demands such an approach. It is a context of complex and interconnected crises, a new era of history, even if we haven't given a name to this new era yet. It started with the pandemic that brought the prototype of the Anthropocene era crisis, sweeping through our systems and bringing down health services, supply chains, economies, budgets, labor markets, channels of cooperation, budgets, again, undermining societal and political stabilities in many parts of the world. As a part of this complex crisis, we witness eruptions of new wars and flare-up of older conflicts. We are approaching the first anniversary of the war in Ukraine, a war that has cost countless lives and caused untold suffering and displacement. A war that has touched the four corners of our planet. A war that has unleashed an energy and food crisis across the globe. A war that even brought back the unconscionable, a threat of a nuclear war. I know many young Indians were studying in Ukraine when the war broke out, and I salute your country and your country's government to their commitment to their safety and security. Your delivery of humanitarian aid has also eased the suffering of the thousands and millions, probably, civilians inside the country. But beyond the physical impacts of this war, its consequences on the international rules-based system, on our multilateral order, on trust among member states, and on public trust in the United Nations have been profound. I have been firm in my cause to uphold the United Nations, vocal in my support for dialogue and diplomacy, and clear in expressing the commitments of the General Assembly to defend the principle of sovereignty and territorial integrity. As a recent member of the Security Council, I commend India for your cause for peace in Ukraine and across the world. This represents just one challenge facing the United Nations and our world. Sadly, it is one of many. Excellencies, as it stands, we are off track of every goal of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Let me repeat, every single goal. This agenda, to which all governments have agreed, is nothing short of transformational. It is a blueprint for humanity. If achieved, will not only survive, but thrive. 2023 marks the midway point in the implementation of this agenda. We'll hold an SDG summit at the United Nations in September. By then, we need honest account of where we are and where we are going. We need to assess our successes as well as our failures. We need to find our gaps and work to close them. Because in September, we'll have to turbocharge the delivery on the SDGs. I have called on the member states to remember that what is at stake, to identify their responsibilities, and to agree on timeframes for reinvigorating and urgent implementation. India has one of the first countries to adopt the agenda, this Agenda 2030. I commend your flagship programs to accomplish its goals at local, subnational, and national levels. Even in the remotest villages, the partnerships between India and the United Nations to accelerate implementation of the SDGs is making a difference. This is the SDG slogan of "Leave no one behind," brought to life. What is more, this model can be adapted and applied elsewhere. India's leadership in the field of digital public infrastructure, from building innovative governance systems to citizen-oriented services, is transformational in action. In short, the international community has a lot to learn from your unique experience. I urge you to engage actively in the discussions to get humanity back on track. We need your help. Dear colleagues, unfortunately, there have been many setbacks on our shared journey to sustainable development. The COVID-19 pandemic cast a dark shadow over our world for over 2 years. Today we are slowly emerging from that shadow. We emerge humbled, and we emerge steadfast in our conviction that global challenges are too great for any nation to tackle alone. That is true for all nations, subcontinents and small islands alike. But let us be honest and admit that while no country has been spared from the pandemic, its impacts have not been equal. Far from it. There are some, often the most vulnerable, often in the global south, who continue to suffer the ravages of this global scourge and its many consequences. A major and lasting impact of the debt crisis looming on the horizon for some, threatening already towering over others. 76 countries in the world. It's more than 1/3 of the membership of the United Nations. It is often said that adversity breeds humanity. And of course, there have been examples of tremendous ingenuity and solidarity. I commend India for your generosity in exporting vaccines to over 150 countries and in championing sustainable recovery through your chairmanship of the G20. This is the kind of inspired leadership that our world needs. But friends, as we step into 2023, we can no longer ignore the pressing need for reforming our global financial institutions. We can equally no longer ignore the need to revise our definition of growth and well-being. I've called on member states to advance discussions on the methodology for measuring sustainability transformation in a way that integrates human well-being, natural capital, and all other aspects of our investments. This is the so-called Beyond GDP initiative. It is premised on the core fact that we cannot transform what we cannot measure. Let me be provocative and challenge you all here at the ICWA to debate and come up with innovative approaches to support this goal. Please tap into the wealth of knowledge and the wide network you have created. As we look ahead, it seems that we are standing on the edge of the precipice, teetering at the point of no return. The question we must answer is simple. Do we back up, change course, and find the safe way across? Or do we continue as we have done, close our eyes, and step off blindly? The answer, I hope, is just as simple. Excellencies, the challenges facing our world are great. They are cascading, interlocking, exacerbating, and reinforcing, but they are not insurmountable. I remain an optimist in heart. I remind myself regularly that we have already weathered many storms together, and that, to quote the old Indian proverb, we cannot change the direction of the wind, but we can adjust the sails. As I look to 2023, there are reasons to hope and opportunities for transformation. In March, for the first time since 1977, we will hold the UN Water Conference. I hope this will bring a new Paris momentum, this time for water action. We need to raise the level of ambition to achieve the promise of the SDG 6. To do that, we must integrate water and climate policies, move beyond reactive water management, establish a global water information system to support regional and local predictability and resilience. These are game changers, in the world of water. In our world, where water is scarce and unpredictable at the same time, these actions would put us on the path of sustainability, come out of the water crisis. So friends, I ask you to think of the future of the Yamuna, the Brahmaputra, the Indus, the Godavari, and the Krishna. I think of the future of the Indian Ocean, of the Vembanad of Chilika Lakes. If they are to have a future, we must turn our rhetoric into reality. And we must base our actions on science. The Namami Gange program for abatement of pollution and rejuvenation of Ganges is an excellent example. Let us replicate it and build up on it. Dear friends, underpinning all of our work, and an issue which I know is close to India's heart, is the need to reform our multilateral system. Let us face the facts. It is no longer 1945. Our institutions cannot hope to overcome the challenges of today when they act in the framework of yesterday. The need for reform of the UN Security Council was directly raised by more than 1/3 of world leaders during the opening of the General Assembly last September. That is a clear political signal. There is a process in place at the United Nations to achieve this. But its outcomes leave much to desire. I have consistently called on member states to grab the opportunity to move from the position of no and later to a position of yes and now. I thank India for its continued and active engagement in this process. I also acknowledge the efforts of Ambassador Kamboj, India's permanent representative to the UN, for bringing it to the Security Council itself, and for inviting me to brief the Council on the issue of reformed multilateralism last December. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, India has always been a staunch supporter of the United Nations. Home to 1/6 of humanity, India's leadership on global challenges and her strong voice in multilateral affairs have been exemplary. The journeys of the UN and independent India have been intertwined since the prospective founding in the 1940s. For 7 decades, we have traveled hand in hand, through thick and thin, through the UN's expansion, through India's population growth, and through its decades of amazing development. You gave the world the first woman president of the United Nations General Assembly. We have been able to count on India in a multitude of issues, from fighting polio to promoting equality, from championing democracy to the empowerment of women. Yet you are not only active in shaping our discussions, but you have put forward your most precious resource, your people, in support of UN's causes. India is one of the largest contributors to troops, to peacekeepings. Thousands of your communities have bid farewell to blue helmets and counted the days to their return. Finally, on a personal note, for more than 4 decades of my work as a diplomat, I have been inspired by Mahatma Gandhi's devotion to peace, the eradication of poverty, and harmony with nature. Friends, allow me to finish in his words, and let me use them as my humble call to you. and to all listening and watching us today. Do what you can to transform our world and build a peaceful, sustainable future which upholds equality and human rights for all. As Mahatma said, be the change that you wish to see in the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Excellency President Korosi, for your very, very comprehensive lecture, which really gave a tour de horizon of the issues that the global community is faced with. Of course, you spoke of the fact that, the world is at a precipice. We cannot afford inaction is not an option for us, but that yet there is hope because 2023 will have some very important summits, and there we should see some action. So with your permission, I will now open the floor to questions. I'll take 3 at one go, and then we'll see how it goes based on time. So the questions. Okay, let me start right there.
Hi, ma'am, and hi, sir. I'm Siddhant from WION. My question to you is, sir, regarding the reforms of the counter-terror regime, the sanction regime of the United Nations Security Council. How do you see it as? Because we have seen it being politicized by certain countries.
Okay, the second question, right here.
I'm Athar Zafar, a researcher at the Council, sir. Thank you for your lecture. You referred to the reform of multilateral institutions. I would like to draw your attention to the UNSC reforms. Sir, as you appoint the co-chairs of the IGN process on UNSC reforms, don't you think that the negotiations-based process, instead of just statement making, should be replaced with the text-based process, and that there should be a fixed time frame for the concrete outcome for the IGN? Thank you.
Thank you. One more question. I see a hand there. And I'll take one. Right here, actually. Yes?
Your Excellency, may I first of all say a great welcome to you here. As someone who had the privilege of being in the same position in the room when you were co-chairing the post-2015 development agenda, I want to say a real big welcome. My question to you is that you have mentioned that we have slipped behind on all the SDGs. Let me ask you to list, especially important for a developing country like India, which is contributing its might to it. What do you think are the 2 or 3 things that we must all, as the world, urgently address? And I draw your attention to our Prime Minister's call as the G20 President to the one world, one family, and one future. And I want to stop by thanking you that today, at the very moment when you recalled Mahatma Gandhi, we all stand in silence in the memory of what is perhaps, let me say, one of the greatest gifts of mankind to humanity. Thank you very much, Excellency.
One last question. I think you took the mic there.
Good morning, Excellency. As stated by you, India is one of the largest troop contributing country to the UN peacekeeping operations. India has also suffered a large number of casualties during these operations. So, in your opinion, do you see to put out some sort of an institutionalized consultative mechanism between the UNSC and the major TCCs, which includes India, towards crafting of UN PKO mandate as well as renewal missions? Thank you, sir.
Excellency.
Thank you much. I hope it works. Please allow me to take these questions in a little bit reverse order, different order, and cluster them. On the UN reform, and I understand your question was first and foremost about the IGN. the reform of the Security Council. For those colleagues who may not be so deeply involved in this question, these processes, let me mention that the reform of the Security Council is now the task of the so-called intergovernmental negotiations. But it is only one part of the reform process we would like to develop to make sure that the UN will be up to the task of the 21st century. But let's come back to the Security Council reform. You may know that it has been quite obvious for more than 20 years that the Security Council needs to be reformed. Its composition, its size, its methods, the regulations of when and how to apply veto on different issues have always been on the agenda. And about 17 years ago, it has been decided that the member states needed a negotiating process. For 13 years, this negotiating process has been going on, and if you now would ask what is the result is very, very slim. There are two major problems what we are now facing. One was brought up by the war in Ukraine. The Security Council has been created in 1945 to be the prime responsible organ for catering for the international peace and security, to make sure that there will be no more wars, no more major wars, and certainly no large-scale destructions in the world. And therefore, extraordinary powers have been placed into the hands of the Security Council. What if the Security Council members, or one of them, a permanent member that has those extraordinary powers, including a veto power, is the one that is attacking its neighbor? It created the situation that the Security Council is incapable of addressing this issue. Since the very beginning of the war in Ukraine, the Security Council has not been able to take any decision on the war on the Ukraine. So it's an absurd situation which is describing the dysfunctions of the Security Council. If millions of people out there expected the UN to deliver in these cases, if millions were expecting the Security Council to make sure that wars would not be repeated, they are frustrated. I can understand them. This must be addressed. The other issue why the Council reform is more and more urgent, the whole logic of the composition and the working method and the construction of the Security Council is based on the years of 1945-1946, when we were coming out of the Second World War. Since then, much has changed. The world economy has changed. The balance of power in the world has changed. New huge economies emerged and started taking leading position in the world, but it is not reflected in the licenses we gave to the hands of the Security Council. So therefore, it is absolutely understandable that the countries and the leaders of the world are more and more impatiently demanding that the Security Council should be reformed. As I mentioned, in the September high-level week, more than one-third of the world leaders very explicitly said that we need the Council reformed. Does it have a time frame? No. For the time being, it does not. Does it have a negotiated text? No, it does not. Does it have a reliable procedure of work? Not really. Why? Have you ever seen a negotiating process which has no text to negotiate? Have you ever seen a negotiating process which has no clear-cut time frame when to deliver? Unfortunately, that is how member states decided when they created the IGN, the Intergovernmental Negotiations. Let me be very provocative. Intellectually, it would not be difficult to draw the reform of the Council within half an hour. It's not a big challenge. Why we cannot do it, why member states cannot do it? Because the interests are very much divided. The member states are very much divided, and for some it is more preferable to see the current dysfunctional stage than to embark on a reform that would change the whole story. I wish I could tell you that the president comes, does what should be done, and it will be done by the end of the year. No, it's not the case. It is a member state-driven process. I nominated the co-facilitators, and the co-facilitators got the task to do their best to make sure that there should be progress on the negotiations. But it's up to the member states to come up with some kind of shared understanding, some kind of compromise. I very strongly ask member states to think very hard. Do they want really to spend another 17 years on a process, or they want to see results as soon as possible? Because if that is the second, if the latter is the case, they will have to make compromises. They will have to make agreements, maybe partial agreements, maybe a step-by-step approach. Otherwise, it will be very, very difficult. So unfortunately, there is no time frame. I wish it would be. On the SDG off track, it will be now very easy to tell where we have the biggest caveats. Before the COVID, the biggest caveats were on the SDGs related to the natural capital. All natural resources, be it water, biodiversity, oceans, climate. After the COVID, basically, we are lagging way behind on all SDGs. So therefore, I could tell you that water, food, energy, health, and so on, these are those that might be the most important SDGs for many, many countries, but I would like to take it from a different angle. Instead of singling out some SDGs, I would like to offer to your attention the method how we perceive sustainability and sustainable transformation. Let's make a step back a little bit. And instead of talking about concrete SDGs, concrete numbers, how this world is working and what does it mean in layman terms, the sustainability transformation. We have basically 5 types of capitals in the world in our everyday life. The human capital, the social capital, the natural capital, the built capital or infrastructure if you wish, and the financial capital. During our operations, we interchange them, one into another. But the real indicator of the sustainability transformation is to make sure that these 5 types of capitals, none of them would be neglected, none of them would be forgotten, and their overall sum will at least be preserved or grow in a more harmonious, more balanced way. Here comes the issue. We don't have that methodology to measure. We can measure a lot of standalone issues. We can measure energy, health, education, food, water in a standalone manner. But if you put the question to yourselves, are we making progress on sustainability transformation? The honest answer is we don't know. We have some educated guesses, but since we don't have the science-based methodology, therefore the honest answer is we don't know, but we should. How are we expecting ourselves to state that, yes, we are really making progress, the SDG implementation by September will be much better? How can we take very serious political commitments in September on level of state and level of heads of state and government, if we cannot say that, okay, fine, how are we going to measure it? We cannot measure it for the time being. It's a big caveat. We haven't produced it yet. The science hasn't produced it yet, and the politicians haven't embraced it yet. Therefore, what is the practice today? Your countries do the national voluntary reports every year for the HLPF, for the High-Level Political Forum. In those reports, if you read those reports, you actually have a very good impression. These are rosy reports. These are very, very encouraging news that everybody is doing almost everything almost perfectly. And then you look into the global data and you understand that we are in a deep trouble. How come? If we all are performing so well, where does the troubling data coming from? So therefore, I think we need two things. One is honesty when we do the reports. The second, we need to have the methodology which hasn't been produced yet. On the troop contribution, first and foremost, my condolences to all those families who lost their sons and daughters. These are unforgivable, huge losses to each community and each family. On the concrete issue, whether or not there is any coordination between the troop and police contributing countries and the Security Council, I have good news. The mandates of the peacekeeping missions are always given and renewed by the Security Council. Before renewing the mandate, there is always a consultation between the troop and police contributing countries and the Council itself. Upon the results of the consultation, the Council takes decision of the renewal of the mandate. So in a way, the mechanism exists. Last but not least, on the sanction regime. Here we come again to the deficiencies of the Security Council, because UN sanctions can only be issued and imposed by the Security Council. The more the Council is divided, the more are the chances that on certain issues of sanctions or other big challenges, there will be no agreement and no decisions in the Security Council. And I'm certainly fully aware of those types of sanctions. India is particularly interested, and particularly interested related to counterterrorism. And I'm very happy that there was progress in the last couple of months in that field as well.
Thank you so much, Excellency President Korosi, for your very detailed responses. And I think you have given such a deep background that it would be deeply appreciated. And through these answers, it is very clear about your commitment to the various various issues that are on the agenda of the United Nations. It is very clear whether you talk of reformed multilateralism, whether you talk about sustainable development goals, sustainability, peacekeeping, and even the issues that are with the UN Security Council and the sanctions issues. We are very much, I think we've run out of time, and if, with your permission, would you like to, one question and then we close? One last question and then we close, Ambassador Bhatia.
Thank you very much. A very enlightening session indeed. I have one question with two facets. One is about this call for solidarity at a time the world is divided, polarized, full of tensions, full of disunity. So what is the actual pathway to get to the goal that you are espousing? And related to this, from your vantage position at the UN, how do you look at G20 as a multilateral grouping? Can G20 deliver where Security Council has failed?
The floor is yours.
Thank you much indeed. On the solidarity and disunity, yes, disunity is part of our life now. The mistrust among membership is there. Sometimes it's deepening. But let me turn the question a little bit. As we inching closer and closer to very complex crises, can we afford just to give in and say, we are disunited? We may not be in the position to come to shared agreements. At least in the field of the global common goods, we have to make progress. We are not going to make much progress on the field of ideology. We may not be in the position to make too much progress on some hardcore political issues. But when it comes to those areas that directly threatening each and every society, climate, water, biodiversity, health, pandemics, oceans, the state of affairs of our planet, it is obvious that we need to improve our global governance, need to assume responsibility for that, because none of us will be able to exercise that responsibility on its own, a single country. So while, yes, countries will remain probably very much disunited on a number of political issues, I hope at least on the issues of global common goods, there must be an agreement. And I see very good foundation for that. I see appetite for that in the General Assembly, and I see the necessity for that. I hope very much that by September you will see that there was a good agreement, with compromises, of course, on much of the global common goods related processes. Now we are having 16 negotiating processes parallel in the General Assembly. On the G20, I'm not entirely sure I'm the right person to ask this question, because I'm not running the G20. India is much better positioned to answer this question. But let me try to judge it from outside. G20 has been created in the time of a major crisis. It was a financial meltdown. And it was created to save the world. It was created to launch action, and it was successful. Now we are in deep trouble. Now we are in a multiple crisis. Now we are in the situation of very, very closely inching to some tipping points. It's up to the members of the G20 to run this platform as a consultative platform or a platform to lead the world, to show example by doing. I hope the Indian leadership will help us to take us closer to some solutions, because only actions, only investments, only cooperation can save us from the worst on a number of issues. Whether or not it can replace the Security Council, no. The Security Council has been created in legal terms to look after peace and security. And this is the only body in the world that when decides, automatically the decision becomes a part of the obligatory international law. The G20 for the time being is not such a body. But it's a big problem that the Security Council does not function as it should. It takes us further away. What happens if the Security Council would not be able to function for years to come? Then the big question comes, should we have something different? And it's in your hands. But for the time being, I would like to encourage the Indian presidency of the G20, go for actions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Your lecture here today and your responses have really added to the understanding of the UN and the various issues that the world faces, the concept of global public goods, and also the importance of looking forward with optimism. And on part of India, Excellency, as you would know, as G20 presidency, our approach is ambitious, action-oriented, and inclusive. So I'm sure as the year goes along, we will see action there. So may I take this opportunity to thank you very much for joining us here. We are indeed privileged and honored to have you here. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, ma'am. On behalf of ICWA, I would like to take this opportunity to once again thank His Excellency Ambassador Csaba Korosi for graciously accepting our request for delivering the 40th Sapru House lecture on such a pertinent topic. We have benefited immensely from your remarks, sir, and gained valuable insights indeed. I also thank our audience this morning for the valuable participation and for enriching it with their meaningful observations and questions. May I now invite everyone for high tea in the foyer. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you so much, Excellency.
Thank you indeed.